Watching the Brendan Banfield murder trial here on WUSA 9+. We've been streaming it live for you. Obviously, Brendan Banfield is on trial for murder, accused of killing his wife, Christine Banfield, and another man named Joseph Ryan. A lot of the same information that we heard Friday. We left off with the judge, Annie, Friday, saying she wanted things to move. She wanted there to be organization, and I know a lot of people have been commenting on our YouTube page. They're not seeing it. Commenting about maybe the jurors are getting bored. So I'm curious to see what Matthew Torres is going to tell us about that when he joins us at around 1 o'clock.
That will be interesting to hear. It's sort of, you know, what he observed from the members of the jury. But we did leave off with the defense bringing back Harry Litsky to the stand, our forensics guy, the forensics analyst, who was really going through today the search warrant for the devices, the cell phone specifically of Juliana, right? And we're still in it right now, but what was your gathering from his findings?
You know, he's again trying to poke holes in the story that Juliana gave up there on the stand, and he's trying to poke holes in that timeline of who was where when the phones were being used, and he's connecting the dots between the Gmail account, the FetLife account, and the Telegram account that was being used for communication. And he said pretty consistently, if you had access to one, you were accessing all three.
All three platforms, yeah. So I think he's really trying to, as you said, poke holes in the prosecution's case as far as what Juliana had testified. Another thing to keep in mind is who's in the courtroom. You know, this is a very horrific thing that played out. You have family members in the courtroom. There's also a young child involved. It's just awful. I know you had a chance to speak with Joseph Ryan's mother. What did she have to share with you?
Yeah, you know, this has been incredibly hard for her. She's watching 100%. It virtually because she has some medical issues. She wasn't able to come up here to watch the trial play out in person, but she has been watching as much as she can. Obviously, there are parts of this that are extremely graphic and gruesome, really hard to watch. I do want to mention, you know, I was talking to her yesterday and the day before. We were just talking about what's been going on in the courtroom, and she wanted me to mention that while she's not physically there in the courtroom, again, she is watching it, but also her sister, so Joseph Ryan's aunt, has been in the courtroom, she says, pretty consistently since day one to be there to show support for the Joseph Ryan family and try to bring awareness that he is a victim too.
He is a victim too, an innocent person that was lured to the home. Okay, so we're probably going to be in this break for about another 10 minutes is my guess, and then they'll resume. There is another break for lunch. Typically around 1 o'clock is the timeline there. So after this break, we will have Frank Salvedo joining us once again. He is our legal analyst, and Frank was weighing in heavily on the forensics part of this, like why is he getting into the weeds of this? Because on Friday it was about 6 hours or so that we heard from forensics experts, and here we are again going into week 3 with another forensics analyst. But this is the defense's strategy.
Yeah.
It's crystal clear, right?
Yeah, he said that this was their strategy. I am curious to see what he thinks of that strategy kind of continuing today. I would love to go back to Joseph Ryan a little bit too. You know, I think we're going to start to hear more about him and the involvement he had in all of this. As you know, Annie, I went down to Florida to speak with his mother right before the trial started, and I'd love if we could play some of our conversation for you.
I remember when I got the call from the detective. He called me and he told me that my son had been killed. And I just know when he told me that I could hear my own voice screaming. And I remember that moment, and I remember where I was sitting, and I remember his words. But it was almost like it was outside of my body, hearing that he had been killed.
Okay, so that was some of it. I don't know if we're able to play the rest of it. Are we able to play the rest of that clip? It looks like it cut off there. It does look like we
I remember when I got the call from the detective. He called me and he told me that my son had been killed. And I just know when he told me that I could hear my own voice screaming. And I remember that moment, and I remember where I was sitting, and I remember his words. But it was almost like I was outside of my body hearing that he had been killed.
Talk to me in the way you're most comfortable about what his role was when it came to sexual fetish websites. Did he ever talk to you about involvement in websites like that?
Yes. This was kind of out of character, right? Not that he brought a knife, but the idea of actually cutting a woman. Like, he could bring a knife and you just sort of act. It's not, you're not using that knife. You're just brandishing the knife. And it's not intended, you know, it's role play. It's not the same thing. So we had discussed that in the past, and it wasn't a strange topic.
What do you want people to know who are hearing you say that and they are passing judgment? What do you want them to know and think about before they pass judgment?
I want them to look in the mirror. That's what I want. If they have issues, they're their issues. And maybe they're ashamed of their own sexual desires.
All right, so that was Deirdre, Joseph Ryan's mother. Obviously, a really hard situation for her. She spoke with us exclusively. It was her first time speaking on camera about her son, and, you know, she took the time to share a little bit about Joseph Ryan, who he was. You can check out more of our conversation on WUSA9.com. We'll also put it in the link on YouTube for you all if you'd like to see more and learn more about Joseph Ryan, the other victim in this case.
While we are in week 3 now, can you share anything that Frank has said to you that is very critical to where this trial stands at this point?
Yeah, you know, I think what we're going to be seeing is, from his standpoint, is we should see things start to pick up a little bit. You know, this trial was slated for 4 weeks, so we are in week 3, and we've lost 2 days already. I did notice in the comments somebody mentioned how that sidebar conversation, where if you were watching, you probably didn't hear any audio for about a 10 to 15 minute stretch. That was because the judge and the attorneys were speaking up at the bench, and they mute the microphones during that. So we've been seeing a lot of those sidebar conversations, and it's kind of slowing things down. But then we also saw things moving quite slowly today again. So I'm definitely going to ask Frank about that, ask him his perspective on why we're still moving so slowly, especially when they only have till next week to get this into the hands of the jury. So I'm curious to see how many more people he's going to call up there. You know, on day 1, he said he was going to call 4 to 5 witnesses. Right. He's already called 9. So
let's show our viewers this number here, 202-895-5599. This is the number that you can continue to send questions in for our legal experts during this trial. We will be sure to get to as many as possible. Katie's going to be spending quite a bit of time with Frank today, so be sure to send in your questions. We see a lot of your comments here in the YouTube chat. And you know what's interesting, Katie, is there are a lot of comments regarding the defense and the defense attorney, John Carroll. What I find interesting is the sentiment from those watching versus what Frank Salvedo has shared about John Carroll. We shared a large portion of your interview with Frank earlier. I don't know if we have that clip, but basically Frank's sentiment is that the defense has done a pretty decent job of showing some missteps and some punching some holes in the prosecution's case.
And that's his perspective, right? And you know,
that's his main priority at this point, right?
Right, and he's pointing out that he feels John Carroll has done a good job of poking holes
just
in that
to raise a doubt.
Right. I will ask him today if he thinks this is a good strategy. I did get to talk to him at length on Friday as well. And you can check out more of that online on YouTube, WUSA9.com. But, you know, I asked him about this process of going so slowly. You know, we're seeing so many people, like you mentioned in the comments, getting frustrated. Are the jurors getting frustrated? And he said, the viewers, us, we are all the same as jurors. You know, if we're feeling something, the jurors are likely feeling it. And he mentioned how, you know, yes, John Carroll is walking that line of annoying the jurors and being fine. He did tell me that most of the time the jury likes the prosecutor, likes the defense attorney. The process is trying to get them to like or dislike the client, if you will. So Brendan Banfield, he mentioned that usually if Frank feels that he has annoyed the jurors in any capacity while he was up there doing his job, he apologizes to them at the end and tells them he's sorry if they felt like he was wasting their time. That wasn't his intention. So I'm curious to see if we see any sort of apology from John Carroll at the end, if there is actually frustration happening in the courtroom. I know on Friday, Matt mentioned that he saw some of the jurors yawning. So, it's a lot of information. It's important information. Is it as juicy and emotional and interesting to maybe some of us at home? Probably not, but a lot of people are interested in this science too.
Oh yes, and I think that Matthew will have a better idea, and he'll be able to share with us sort of like what the jury members look like. These are 16 residents of Fairfax County selected, and that was another thing that really surprised me early on, because I thought for sure jury selection would take longer, just given the high profile interest in this case. But they were able to select jury members and seat 9 men, 7 women, I believe, and that was taken care of on Monday, and Tuesday was day 1 of the actual courtroom trial. So really interesting that they were able to seat those jury members quickly. The video that we also saw, or will be sharing with you later, we were able to get our hands on the actual video, the footage of the body cam that the officer who accompanied Brendan to the hospital wore that day.
Right.
Now, if you were with us last week, then you remember the audio. We listened to the audio clip of that, but today we actually have the video clip that we will be playing for you.
We'll have that
during
in the
1 o'clock lunch break. So stick around for that, because that is riveting. The defense showing that there is a reason for that. I think it's, maybe Frank can speak more to this, but really the defense wants the jury members to see and hear this video of how Brendan Banfield reacted when he was told by the hospital official that his wife, Christine, had passed away.
Right. I think they're trying to show his emotional side of it. I can add that I just checked in with our digital producer, Elena, and she said that they're going through the video right now to make sure it's safe to share. This is obviously extremely graphic stuff. So it should be up on our website shortly. We will again put a link for you in the YouTube comments, but also it'll be on our website, WUSA9.com, and we are hoping to be able to show you some clips and have Frank kind of explain some of the reasoning of why this was something that was so important to get into the hands of the jury.
And on the prosecution side, that moment was also the time that the officer did allow Brendan to wash the blood off his hands.
Right.
He mentioned that he felt bad. His wife had just passed away, and you could hear the hospital official in the video saying, maybe that will make you feel better, just to kind of get cleaned up and compose yourself a little more. But
remember the whole reason for that portion of the conversation, the hand washing, is because they don't have any blood evidence from Brendan's hands.
Right.
Whose blood was on his hands? Was it Christine's? Was it Joseph Ryan's? And they'll never have that answer because they never swapped his hands. They let him wash his hands.
Yes, and that was such a big piece to this. But yes, much of the testimony Friday from forensics experts, for me, it was about, that Christine Banfield could have been behind those devices
just
that we're now
poking
talking
questions
about.
into it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think some of what we heard today, I think one of the things that really stuck out to me was when, he presented his evidence that Juliana's phone was at a nearby park where at the time, that's supposedly when the Gmail account was being made. So that kind of not showing a clear connection of where her phone was and was it in the home. She said she was part of the process of making that Gmail account, but now her phone is somewhere else. And the prosecution made a point to say, this was her device, not at the home. That doesn't mean Juliana wasn't at the home. It means her device.
It's not clear, right? But we did learn that, and so did the members of the jury.
Right, and it makes you wonder, are the jurors listening to this and starting to have questions and questioning Juliana's story? And I said to you, do you think they're gonna bring Juliana back up to the stand to kind of clarify, why was your phone in this park when you said you were at the home putting together this Gmail account with Brendan? So I'm curious to see if they're going to bring her up. Again, she is subject to recall here, so she could be brought back up on that stand.
Yeah. I'm just kind of going through some of these comments. I mean, we really do appreciate you all being so engaged with us on YouTube. Be sure to send us those questions too to that number 202-895-5599. That way, Katie, you will get those questions to Frank during the 1 o'clock break.
Yes.
Okay.
And we'll bring all of those answers for you. He's been offering us some really solid perspective on this, I think, and just offering us a different kind of look, you know, than what you and I would be able to talk about. He knows the legalities to it, but then, you know, he also pointed out things like Brendan Banfield and the question of whether or not he would take the stand. You know, Frank doesn't think he's ever going to take the stand. John Carroll did say he was going to take the stand, but he did not say it in front of the jurors, and I think that's important to mention. So the jurors don't.
He would.
Right, and so the jurors don't necessarily have this expectation of whether or not Brendan will or will not take the stand. But Frank said, you know, it would be a big risk for Brendan Banfield to get up there on the stand.
Yeah. And maybe you can replay that portion of the interview with Frank later on too, because I thought that was really riveting. And you know, you're right. Frank has really raised some important things along this trial. I remember I asked him about, you know, of course, none of us have a crystal ball, but you know, what for Frank, was there a moment during this trial in the last now 2 solid weeks that sort of stood out to you, Frank? And he mentioned the gun range. He mentioned, I thought that was an odd piece, you know, who would take their nanny to the gun range? Right. And we heard from the manager at the gun range, right?
And you know, people keep saying, why does it matter that they were having an affair? I've seen that comment multiple times. Why is the affair such an important part of this? And for Brendan, he, you know, they said that it speaks to his motive. It does look like court is getting back in session.